Now that you've done your sweat test and you know your numbers, if you've read Sweat, Think, Go Faster, you know the next step is to learn more about your stomach. Your stomach's the limiter, and it determines how much fluid and how many calories you can consume per hour during activity. Now, in certain conditions, some of you are going to need more than others, and some of you are going to need a lot more than others. There's no such thing as a general rule when it comes to sports nutrition. We're all different, and we all have different needs. In regard to your sweat test, your sweat rate is the volume of fluid that you lose per hour based on the conditions that you did the test in. Now, this sweat rate's going to change, and it'll change based on environmental conditions. Obviously, when it's hot and humid, your sweat rate's going to be higher. In cooler conditions, your sweat rate's going to be lower. If you compete in different environmental conditions, it's a great idea to learn your sweat rate in those particular conditions. That way you can alter the volume of fluid that you consume based on your needs and based on the changing environment. In hot, humid conditions, you want to be able to drink enough to minimize percentage of loss. In cooler or cold conditions, you want to make sure you're not drinking too much to compromise the stomach. In regard to your sodium concentration, this number is the amount of sodium that you lose per 1 litre of sweat. Now, the great thing is you only need to do this sodium concentration test once, as this number is unique to you and it doesn't change. As mentioned previously, what does change is your sweat rate, and that alters the accumulative loss of sodium. Meaning, for example, if your sweat rate in cold conditions was 500 mils per hour, or half a litre, and your sodium concentration was 1200 milligrams per 1 litre of sweat, the accumulative loss of sodium would be 600 milligrams per hour. In hot, humid conditions, your sweat rate might jump up to 1.8 litres per hour, and the accumulative loss of sodium would then be 2160 milligrams per hour. So if you compete in varying conditions, your hydration strategy will be constantly changing based on your needs and based on the changing environmental conditions. Hopefully you were able to gather information about your calorie expenditure during the 1 hour test. Now, if you did, most athletes are surprised at the gap between how much they're losing and how much they've been consuming previously. So the key to sports nutrition is to understand what your losses are and then to bridge the gap between losses and your stomach's tolerance. And the better you can bridge that gap, the better you're going to go. Now, this number, the amount of calories that you require per hour, is going to be based on the intensity that you compete at, and it's going to be based on your stomach's limitations, or how much your stomach can tolerate. The aim now is to learn more about your stomach, specifically your stomach's limitations. The amount of calories that you can consume per hour over an extended period of time, in an attempt to bridge the gap between your calorie expenditure and your stomach's limitations. Now, this is done in training, using different amounts of calories to find out what works best for you. Learning more about how your stomach tolerates calories is all about timing. Now, if some athletes who can consume energy gels for 24 hours straight, others that need solid food options in between. We're all different. But I'll use these Shots energy gels as an example of how timing changes the calorie intake per hour. The Shots energy gel, that I've formulated is a 45 gram sachet with 33 ml serving. And there's 117 calories per sachet. So if you were to consume one gel every hour, that provides 117 calories. Now remembering that you have your calorie expenditure and you want to bridge that gap between calorie expenditure and your stomach's limitations. Now if you think you can bridge that gap better, if you were to consume a gel every 45 minutes, that would provide around 175 calories per hour. Once again, effectively bridging that gap, but can you bridge it better? And remembering that the longer the duration, the better that you can bridge that gap, the better you're going to go. If you were to take a gel every 30 minutes, that would provide 234 calories per hour. If you wanted to consume a gel every 25 minutes, that would provide 290 calories per hour. Or if you wanted to really test your stomach's limitations and bridge that gap between calorie expenditure and how much your stomach could tolerate, you could consume a gel every 20 minutes, which would provide 350 calories per hour. Now that 350 calories is about the maximum the stomach can tolerate per hour over an extended period of time. And I've tested this on hundreds of athletes. So the fact is, regardless of how high your calorie expenditure is per hour, 350 calories an hour is about the maximum your stomach's going to tolerate. Now it's about timing, and it's about you finding out the maximum amount of calories your stomach can tolerate per hour comfortably to bridge the gap. Once you have decided the amount of calories that works best for you, this won't change, regardless of the environmental conditions, whether it's 1 degree or whether it's 41 degrees. The amount of calories that you consume per hour won't change. Now, if you've read Sweat, Think, Go Faster, I talk about energy to volume ratio. I talk about customizing and adapting. I talk about separating hydration to calories. I'll explain to you what that all means and why relying on calories in a drink locks you into a preset solution. This is what I mean about energy to volume ratio. Regardless of the brand, as soon as you start relying on calories in your drink, you're locked into a set volume and you're locked into a set electrolyte component. Now the calories in this particular formulation is 240 calories per 750 ml serve. And energy to volume ratio is the amount of calories based on the volume. Now this might be the right amount of calories for you, but you're forced to drink that volume of fluid to access those calories. Shots Energy Gel. Similar amount of calories, 234 calories compared to 240, but in a 66 ml volume. Now, understanding that the stomach has limitations, if you can consume 234 calories in a 66 ml volume compared to a 750 ml volume, your stomach's going to tolerate that option so much better. So that's what I mean about separating hydration to calories, but most importantly, the energy to volume ratio. I want to discuss customizing and adapting because I mentioned it in Sweat, Think, Go Faster. These powdered, preset, one-size-fits-all solutions is like walking into a bike shop and having one bike to choose from, or walking into a running store and having one pair of shoes to choose from. You need to be able to customize and adapt. All of your sporting equipment is customized to your needs. Your sports nutrition should be the same. Now you're locked into a volume of fluid. You're locked into the calorie component and you're locked into the electrolyte component. You can't customize it, you can't adapt it. And this is what I also talk about with separating hydration to calories. Because now that you're armed with information about your sweat rate in the conditions you did the test in, and now you know the sodium concentration of your sweat, and you know that the cumulative loss of sodium will change based on your sweat rate. Now your calorie intake won't change, regardless of the weather conditions. What will change is the volume of fluid that you require and the sodium component. Now, if you're relying on that preset solution, you can't customize and adapt, as mentioned. Remove the calories from the drink and add the sodium accordingly, based on how much you require and based on the conditions that you're competing in. So if it's cold in the morning and you don't need to drink much, you can drink the volume of fluid that you require based on your needs and based on the weather conditions. You can change the volume of fluid as you compete during the day and as the temperature changes. If you're not relying on your calories in your drink, you can do that. You can customize and adapt. If you have a higher sodium concentration in your sweat, you add more tablets accordingly. And it's all about minimizing percentage of loss. You know what your losses are now in regards to sweat rate and sodium concentration in your sweat. So you can address your needs and customize accordingly and not be locked into a preset solution. Now, if you have a high sweat rate and you need to drink more, you don't have to be worried about consuming more calories that are locked into that drink. If you have a very, very high sodium concentration, or you're going to be competing in hot, humid conditions where the cumulative loss of sodium is going to be higher, you add more tablets. That way you're addressing your hydration, you're addressing your sodium component, and you're not guessing. And you can alter the volume accordingly. Separating hydration from calories takes a lot of pressure off the gut. And you'll find you'll be able to consume a greater volume of calories than you could before because you've reduced the volume. And you can alter the amount of fluid you're consuming based on your needs and based on the changing conditions. And you can alter the sodium component based on your needs and based on the changing conditions. Energy to volume ratio, customizing and adapting, separating your calories from your hydration. That's the key to sorting out stomach issues. It's a key to solving muscle cramping, and it's the key to going faster.